everyone. I hope that you are doing very, very well. I know that we are in the midst of just hectic Christmas makes. And I do mean hectic because I myself proposed to make 3 garments this Christmas, not counting this one that I'm wearing. And yeah, hasn't really gone that well. But what I am here to tell you is that I am so grateful and thankful to each and every one of you that have watched my videos, commented on my videos, and subscribed to my channel, whether it be here or on Instagram. And I wanted to give you a little gift from me to you. So this is a how-to on this granny raglan sweater that I am wearing. So as I said, this is a granny raglan sweater, which means we work it top down. And since we start from the neckline, it is very easy to adjust width or length in this sweater. So in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you how I made this 3-color granny sweater. And I'm calling it Granny Claus because I chose to have this be my Christmas sweater, so I chose Christmas colors for it, which I chose red, white, and green. Now I have used stash yarns for this. I have combined sport weight and DK as well as light DK weight yarns for this project, so hopefully you will find something in your stash that you can use to make this sweater. As I've said, we work a raglan from the top down. So I began with a neckline measurement that honestly was about 18 inches before I added the rib. So hopefully that will be easy enough for you to adjust if you need a wider neckline. Now I know mine is sitting a little bit silly, and that is because I wanted to share that you don't have to make this granny sweater long sleeved if you don't want to. You could just literally make it sleeveless, like I have left it here. You could add shorter sleeves, whatever you wish to do with this sweater, that is entirely up to you. So I hope that you join me in making this granny claws, this granny raglan sweater, and thank you for being here. Thank you for your support. I hope you enjoy this how-to video, and if you do make it, then please share it in the comments or over on Instagram, tag me. You can even share on Pinterest because I am on Pinterest. Anyway guys, thank you so much for being here. And if you need written instructions, then you can head on over to my blog or my website to check out the written instructions. All the links to everything I talk about in this video can be found in the description box below. So now that I've blathered on for quite a bit, please do join me in making this granny raglan sweater. First things first, let's talk materials. We're going to need 405 grams of sport weight yarn. And of course, we are going to need 2 different hook sizes, 4.25 USG hook for the main body of the sweater and a 4mm hook for the sleeves. I will discuss the rest of the materials a little bit later on in the video. So let's move on to the measurements that I made this sweater to. Just so you know, these measurements were taken pre-blocking, okay? So the neckline measures 8 inches. This, of course, is given the number of stitches that I chose to start my sweater with. Of stitches, my gauge was 10 rounds and 5 granny stitches in 4 inches. Then we have our armhole depth that, for me, I chose to go with a depth of 7.75, almost 8 inches. You can determine this by measuring a t-shirt that you already have, another raglan project that you've done, or just going to the Craft Yarn Council and looking for the measurements that they recommend. And because of the armhole depth, the armhole shape, the armhole actual part where we're gonna be doing our sleeve is about 7 inches, okay? Like I said, for the raglan, you can start with the same number of stitches that I started with and then just keep going until you reach your desired armhole depth. For the chest area, doing the 78 stitches I started with and going to an armhole depth of 7.75, I actually have 40 inches of bust. So it's a pretty roomy sweater on me. And after the bust, I did decide to do 4 decreases total. So it took me about 18 inches for the waist area instead of the, and remember this is 18 times 2, okay? Sorry, I should have said that, I was measuring it flat. And then the length that we have pre-border is 16 inches, and I am planning on doing a 2-inch border. So the total length of the sweater, pre-washing, drying, etc. is 18 inches. And like I said, length is very, very easy to adjust. You would just need more yarn. And speaking of yarn, for this sweater, I am using leftover yarns. This is a scrappy granny stripe sweater. So the red is Drops Saffron, and this is a 100% cotton, classified as a sport weight yarn. I'm also using Drop Saffron in this color green. So far 2 colors that are 100% cotton. And then for the creamy white, it's not full on white, I am using Lion Brand Comfy Cotton, which is a heavier weight yarn. It's about a DK. So we're combining yarn weights here, but I honestly didn't think that was a problem. So in order to accommodate this different yarn weights, I decided to go with a 4.25 USG hook, okay? If you want the written notes for this pattern, you may check out the the description box below for the link. You will also be needing a tape measure. You will also be needing a pair of scissors, a yarn needle, some stitch markers, and your yarn of choice. So I'm going to be sharing with you how I made this granny stitch Christmas sweater, or really it can be just a granny stitch sweater in general. So this is a raglan construction, as I've already mentioned, and if you're not familiar with raglan construction, can be bottom up or top down. Today we're working top down, so we're starting with our neckline and we're increasing in 4 points to get our yoke and armhole in the same setup. Okay, so for today's tutorial, I'm going to be using a bigger yarn than I am using for the pattern, just so that you can see it better. Before we start crocheting, we need to determine 2 things, and number 1 is your neckline opening. Because this is a top-down sweater, we start from our neck, okay? So you can determine this by comparing with a t-shirt or another existing sweater that you've used. The second measurement that we need is our armhole depth, and our armhole depth is exactly what it sounds like. We go from the point of the neckline and we increase at a diagonal, in this case because we're working a top-down raglan sweater. So this measurement can be determined from an existing t-shirt, from a project that you've already completed, or as I've said, you could go to the Craft Yarn Council and get your measurements from there. We just need, as I said, neckline, armhole depth, just to get us started. Now for this tutorial, I already mentioned that I'm going to be using a larger yarn than I have used in this project, but that's because I want you to see the stitches clearly. So this is just a 100% cotton yarn that I am ripping back to cast on, or to start the project with you guys. Also, just on a little side note, please remember that I am going to be sharing with you the steps I followed, the stitches counts I followed to create this sweater for the measurements that I gave you right at the beginning of the video. So to start, I'm actually going to be starting with foundation single crochet. In order to do that, I'm going to chain 2. Once I've chained 2, I'm going to go into that very first chain and I'm going to insert my hook, yarn over, pull up a loop. And then I'm going to yarn over, pull through that very first loop on the hook. then I'm going to yarn over and complete my single crochet. That is the first foundation single crochet. To do the second foundation single crochet, I'm going to zoom in so you can see better, first of all, and then we are going to be going into the space that we created from the stitch before. Okay, so the previous stitch, the space right under that stitch, that is where we're going. We're yarning over, we're pulling up a loop, and then we're yarning over, pulling through the first loop, which creates kind of like that chain that we would normally do, and then we yarn over, complete our single crochet. Once again, we go into the previous stitch, the base of the previous stitch, and I'm going to be working my granny raglan in multiples of 3. So I'm actually going to be doing 78 foundation single crochet. If you prefer to work from a chain, then I suggest you do 79 chains. And this with a 4.25 millimeter hook and the sport weight drops yarn that I mentioned at the beginning will give us 8 inches flat for the neckline, which is 16 inches approximately for our neckline space. And I think 16 inches is very appropriate for anything from a size small to possibly a large, depending on how wide your neck is. So just keep that in mind. So here I am completing my foundation single crochet. I think I've done 75, so this would be 76, 77, and 78. So once we've completed our foundation single crochet stitches, we're just gonna lay this flat on the table and kind of gently pull on it to make sure that our stitches are not twisted. It is very important that we don't twist our stitches. And now we are going to join to start working in the round. To join in the round, we will be using a slip stitch, and once we complete our slip stitch, we are going to be pulling tightly to make sure that it's as invisible as possible. After we have pulled that slip stitch tightly, we're going to double check that our work is laying flat. This is the wrong side of our work, so that when we turn it, we are working on the right side of the work. Right, so now we start with a chain of 3. And then into the very same stitch, we are going to work 2 double crochets for a total of 3 double crochets. Then we chain 2 and we complete our granny corner by doing 3 double crochets into the same stitch. So this is going to be our starting corner. You know, if you're familiar with the granny stitch, you know that you work your corners with 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So incidentally, this is also the back of our work, and I'm just going to place a stitch marker to remember that this is where I started. So once we've done that starting corner, we are going to skip 2 stitches, and in the 3rd stitch we're going to do a granny stitch. Remember that a granny stitch is 3 double crochets in the same stitch. So again, skip 2, and into that 3rd stitch we are going to work a granny. We're going to repeat this sequence of skip 2, do a granny stitch 2 more times. So again, skip 2 and in the 3rd stitch do a granny. Again, skip 2 and in the 3rd stitch do a granny. This brings our total granny count to 3. And that starting corner. So let's compare with the sweater that I've already completed. What we are working on is this right here. So we started at a back corner. You can see the thread here. We've done that, and then we did 1, 2, and 3 granny stitches. Then we skip 2 and do a corner. So if this granny is our back shoulder corner, then these 3 granny stitches are meant to go over the shoulder and bring us to that front corner. So that is what we are going to be doing now. We are going to be working the front corner, the first front corner. And again, I just want to give you that little measurement of going over the shoulder. It's if we place it at the 2 skip stitches before the corner and after the corner, it is 2.5, almost 2.75 inches to go over that shoulder. Okay. So after we've completed that 3rd granny, we are going to skip 2 and do a corner. And the corner is 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet. So we have right now 2 corners, 1, 2, and then 3 granny stitches in between. Remember that the corner are the shoulder points, and those 3 stitches in between is how we go over the shoulder, or over the bridge, should we say. So now for the front part, we're going to skip 2 and do a granny stitch. And we're going to repeat this skip 2, do a granny stitch 8 times. So we should have a total of 8 granny stitches. Skip 2, do a granny stitch. This is the 2nd granny stitch. So after we have a total of 8 granny stitches, we are going to skip 2 and do a corner again. And the corner, as I said before, is 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets all into that same stitch. or in other words, a granny stitch, chain 2, granny stitch in the same stitch. And after we've completed this corner, it is time to once again go over the bridge so that we can start working on the back portion of our neckline. This is what we have until now. We have 3 corners. So now we are going to go over the bridge, as I said, and we're going to work our 4th corner, and then we will work the back of the neckline. So now, as I said, we are going to skip 2 and do 3 double crochet, and we'll repeat that for a total of 3 times. So by the end of this section, we should have 3 granny stitches. Skip 2, granny stitch, skip 2, granny stitch. After we complete this 3rd granny stitch, we are going to skip 2 and do the last corner for this round. After completing the corner, we are going to skip 2 and do a granny stitch for a total of 8 times. So once we skip 2, do a granny stitch, skip 2, do a granny stitch, we should have a total of 8 granny stitches. So I'm going to leave you guys to do that, and I will meet you back here when it is time to join this round 2 of our neckline, because I guess well, no, let's count this as round 1 of our neckline, because the single crochets were really a setup round. Yeah. So once we have those 8 granny stitches, it is time to skip the final 2 stitches and join to that first double crochet, or actually to the chain 3 of our first corner. And after we join to this 3 double crochet, we are actually going to be slip stitching until we reach the corner. But before that, I do want to mention that in this tutorial, I won't be changing color every round. I know I did that for my granny raglan. It is an option for you. I just won't be doing it in this tutorial. So like I said, we need to slip stitch so that we can be at the center of our corner. So in that chain 2 space, that is where we are going to begin the round. This is the only round where we will have to slip stitch to get to that corner, and I'll be showing you why in this round. So slip stitch in the chain 2 space, and now we are ready to begin round 2. If you were switching colors every round, you would also need to start in this chain 2 space, okay? So now for round 2, we've already completed the first round of the neckline, obviously, but what I want you to take a look at is that essentially what we're going to be doing is that we're going to be working corners into our 4 corners. So into these chain 2 spaces, we work our corners, and for the rest, we're just going to be working granny stitch between our granny stitches. So it is very straightforward. We will be repeating this round 2 process for the duration of our raglan yoke, however long you need that to be. Like I said, I did 7.75 inches, which was 13 rounds. So to begin round 2, I'm actually going to start with what I like to call an alternate double crochet, and that begins by doing a single crochet. So once again, we're going to chain 1 and we're going to go into the space and pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops so that we have a single crochet. Go into that first leg of the single crochet, pull up a loop, and then complete your single crochet. Now we are going to complete 2 double crochet stitches. In order to be able to join in the round easier, and if you're changing colors, to change color easier, we're going to leave this beginning space this beginning corner incomplete. We'll complete it when we come back. And now, like I said, we're going to be working granny stitches between our granny stitches. So granny stitch is 3 double crochets into the same space or stitch. Okay, that's our second granny stitch done. And now we've reached a corner, so that means that in that chain 2 space of the corner, we are going to work 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets. So round 2 really marks the repeat for the rest of the raglan sweater until we split for the sleeves. After we split for the sleeves, things are a little different, but not by much. So still completing my corner here. And then after I complete the corner, we're just going to work a granny stitch between each granny stitch. And really, that is all there is to this granny raglan sweater. Do a corner in the chain 2 space and work a granny stitch between the granny stitches. So it's actually very, very simple, and I hope easy enough to follow with my instructions. Or, you know, my little recipe for what I did. And we are right back at our half finished starting and ending corner. So what we have left to do would be typically 3 double crochets and then a chain 2. But for this corner, I want to be able to work into that chain space. So to close it off, instead of doing a chain 2 and slip stitching to join, I'm actually going to do a single crochet in that first double crochet of the group. And this will allow me to maneuver and insert my hook into the space or the gap created by doing the single crochet and starting my next corner for round 3. So I'm simply going to insert my hook and complete my alternate double crochet, or if you choose to, you can also complete 3 double crochets. A double crochet and then just complete your group of 3 double crochets, because remember that for our starting corner we work a half corner. So now we are simply going to repeat the instructions that we did for round 2, and that is working a granny stitch between a granny stitch and a corner in each corner. So as I said, I hope this is, I've explained it well enough for you to follow along with what I did. Once again, I'm just sharing with you what I did. This is not a graded pattern, but it is a pattern that is very easy for you to adjust for your own bust and neck measurements. After we've completed our desired number of rounds, which for me was 13, and it gave me an armhole depth of almost 8 inches, it is time to split for the sleeves. Let's say that I've already done the raglan the size that I need to do it, and now we are getting ready to join and split for the sleeves. So as you see here, I've already done my single crochet, but I'm actually going to be switching yarn colors so you can see this clearly. So I am going to go back to 1, grab my newer color and pull that through. I've just changed my color very successfully. So let me pull on that gray one. And now what we are going to do is join, like I said. So I'm treating this starting corner as my back, okay? So this would be back, front. Now I am going to make a granny stitch in this corner, just a granny stitch. I won't be doing the full corner. So there we are. That's 1 double crochet, that's 2 double crochet, and this is 3 double crochet. So now we need to connect to our front corner. So I am quite literally just going to fold my work so it's easier, and then do another granny stitch in this corner. So like I said, instead of doing a corner, I'm doing the granny stitch. And look at that, we've joined in the round, and we have our armhole, and now we have our body. Okay, so now I'm just going to work granny stitch between the granny stitches until I reach my next corner. Okay, and this is my last space before the corner. Okay, so I'm at a corner again. Just like in the first corner, I am just going to do a granny stitch. So that is 3 double crochets. And I'm going to skip all the other shoulder stitches until I reach my next corner, and I'm going to do a granny stitch here. So there. Now I'm just going to continue working the granny stitch until I reach the end of the round. And at the end of the round, I'll show you how we are going to alternate our joins. Okay. And this is the last granny stitch that we're going to do for this round. Oops. Right. So now to join, I'm going to slip stitch to that first double crochet, and I've joined in the round. Now I'm going to be alternating how I start my rounds. So as I said, I'm going to be alternating how I start my rounds now. I started the previous round with a granny stitch, so I'm going to start this round with a partial granny stitch, just doing a double crochet into this first space, and then moving on to my next space, which should be between my armhole, and doing a granny stitch there. Okay, and then just continue along doing granny stitch between the spaces. Okay. Don't forget to work a granny stitch where the armhole meets, so that is right here. As I said, we're going to continue along working our granny stitch between each granny stitch until we reach that granny stitch where we just had the one double crochet. The beginning of the round, I have a double crochet, so I'm just going to do 2 double crochets to close this round off. Okay. Slip stitch to join, and now I'm actually going to slip stitch into this next space to start my next round. Okay, remember that I told you I'm alternating the way I start my rounds, so I'm going to start this round by doing so we slip stitch, and I'm going to chain 1 as well, tighten that. Okay, and now I'm going to do a full granny cluster to start this round. So that's 1, this is 2, and this is 3. So that means that when we come back around, we are going to slip stitch and work in the space before. Okay. So let's say your sweater is coming a little bit wider than you wanted and you want to do some decreases. For reference, in my granny jumper, I did a total of 4 decreases. They are a little bit obvious, so I try to keep my decreases under the armhole on either side of the sweater. But what we are going to do to decrease in the granny stitch is to do a double crochet into the next space. And now we're going to do a double crochet decrease over this space and the following space. Okay, so we're going to do a double crochet decrease over the space you've just worked into and the following space. You could do that by doing a traditional double crochet decrease, or I like to do it a bit more invisibly. So I'm going to pick up the front loop of this stitch and then go over here and wrap around and complete my wrap around, pull through these 2, and complete my double crochet. And then in that same space between where we completed the decrease, we are going to do a double crochet again. Okay, so now we have a group of 3 and we've decreased. So let's do that again, slower this time. Then we will continue working our granny stitch between each granny stitch until we want to work our next decrease if we so desire. I recommend that you do your decreases right under the armholes. As I said, the decrease is pretty obvious and I think it's just better to hide it a little bit. So this is it for the body. It's just going around and around in granny stitch until we are happy with the length that we have. And then if you would like, you would do a border. So like I've done here. So as I shared with you, this whole sweater measures 16 inches and then I added the border, okay? So for this border, I decided to do some half double crochet in the third loop and half double crochets in the back loop. I will share the rib, the neckline, and quite possibly the beginning of the sleeves in the next installment for this granny raglan sweater. I hope you enjoyed this video and I can't wait to see you next time.